The views expressed in this podcast are solely based on personal experience and is not intended to replace professional medical advice. Our opinions should not be taken as therapeutic advice, as this podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Police Condition. My name is Ryan, and sitting across from me and always standing beside me, my lovely wife, Laura.
Hello.
So I know we haven't done a podcast in a while, been very busy with life and work and jobs and all that, which I know everybody understands, but figured we could finally get out here and get a new one going. So today we kind of want to talk about public perception with the media and the media scrutiny and just how it affects law enforcement, how we do our jobs. I know during all the protests and everything from 2020, we definitely had a lot of scrutiny and did a lot with the whole just people basically thinking we're all shit people and shit cops and all that kind of thing. And every cop was bad. ACAB, all cops are bad. So we want to kind of talk about how that affects us and the kind of things it does affect us.
I don't know what year it was, but I feel like George Floyd really exploded that just stereotype of bad cops. And
Yeah, it was 2020.
that was 2020?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that because of the protests?
Yes, all the
Okay.
protests was
Well, then
basically
I'm done.
because of him.
Yeah, that was interesting. What's your take on that?
I mean, obviously one cop did something stupid and it was on film.
Do you think he did something stupid?
I think there were things that could have been done differently. I'll never armchair quarterback a situation because I wasn't there. I
Yeah.
didn't see it firsthand. But yeah, things could have obviously been done, I think, a little bit differently. But I'm not saying that George Floyd wasn't wrong because that dude was, he was on fentanyl or something. I don't even know the whole story of the case, to be honest with him. But and he wasn't a great guy either. But did he deserve to die? No. But I don't also think it was the cop's fault that he died. I think a lot of it was the drugs. So
Hmm. Yeah.
cops didn't help the situation.
Yeah.
And obviously it looked horrible.
Yeah.
And perception is 99% reality to people nowadays just because, everything they see on the internet's real, even though
Yeah.
there may be another side to the story again, but that's the armchair quarterbacking. People want an armchair quarterback who have never done the job in their lives, never been a cop, never once put a badge or a gun on their hip and protected people, and then they're going to try to tell us how to do our job and what we should do differently. Like my favorite is, why didn't they just shoot him in the arm or in the leg? Well, every shot we take, we're accountable for. What is the biggest part on someone's body? Their torso,
Mm.
right? Trying to hit an arm and a leg in a high stress situation is even harder. And I mean, how many times have you seen cops that have been in shootings that have shot at somebody and have still missed because of that high stress situation and maybe not the right amount of training?
I thought he was like sitting on his chest or
Oh,
something.
yeah, it was. I'm just saying
Oh, like
people want to armchair quarterback
yeah,
and
okay, you're
say
saying
these
yeah.
things and
They
say,
don't
oh, well, yeah,
understand.
because they've never done the
Yeah.
job. Like, oh, they should have shot him in the leg, or they should have shot the gun out of his hand. You know how freaking hard that is.
Yeah, especially in like a high stress
Yeah,
situation,
exactly.
it's like your
When
reaction. And it's like
so it's just
you do that.
yeah, you probably couldn't even shoot a static target sitting there, and you're going to
Yeah.
try to shoot a gun out of someone's hand who's moving, maybe has a hostage. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd shoot a civilian probably. And that's not even in a high stress situation.
I
But
know,
no,
I know some cops that would probably still do that too on accident.
well, like from a very uh, just ignorant standpoint, because all I did was read articles. I wasn't there, like you're saying, and I don't know. I think the officer like sitting on him isn't really, and I don't know anything about like y'all's procedures, what you do, but I feel like that's probably not something you would do to somebody, even if he was handcuffed, he was detained. You're gonna sit on
So
him.
now there are techniques of when you're handcuffing people from a certain area where yeah, you do get on their back and you put your knees into a part of their back and a part of their shoulder.
Apparently, this was for a longer period of
Yeah,
time.
this is for a while, but again, this was
Yeah,
the
but
whole situation was bad, but then I also think it was thrown out of proportion.
well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the the kid Brown was his name or whatever happened prior to this incident
Yes.
happening and kind of like
Well, yeah, it was
setting
it
people
was
off
it was like a
already.
powder keg, just every situation lit the fire closer to it, and it finally just exploded.
Would you agree that all this started with Rodney King in the 90s?
I don't know. I feel like it calmed down from the 90s. There was a big moment in the 90s where it was pretty heavy, and then I think things kind of calmed down a little bit. And what do
Was
you?
was it Rodney King? I said his name, and then I think of
Yes,
the
yeah, you're
talk
right.
show guy.
No, you're
Like,
right.
wait,
Rodney King, yeah.
okay. So, do you think that was it, or do you think there was more hostility towards police before that incident with
The,
King?
there's always been hostility towards police. There's always been bad cops that have done bad things. There's always been people that have pushed to try to make cops look bad. There was a situation the other day just down the street that some of the deputies were dealing with and some of our officers where the lady wouldn't get out of her car. She was blocking the highway and she decided, at first it was fine. Then all of a sudden she decided she wanted to fight. She was wearing a t-shirt, no pants, completely butt naked underneath. And all of a sudden she just starts to fight and she's yelling things like, the cops are trying to kill me. The cops are trying to kill me. To us, it looks like she's just trying to get a payday. Like, doing stuff like that. And I mean, if anybody would have been driving by and decided to film it, it would have looked horrible because, I mean, it was a bunch of cops on a black lady who was being non-compliant. She did everything wrong, went to jail, got several charges for assault of a public servant, for a bunch of other things. But if anybody driving by would have decided to film it, it would have looked like we were the ones in the wrong. So, and that kind of brings it to my first point with all this is public perception, right? So, just the George Floyd thing. I mean, go back to that. Public perception was after that, all cops are bad, right? And that was, I mean, I don't know how many times I had that screamed in my face when we were doing the protest crap.
Yeah.
Oh, all cops are bad. All cops are bad.
Yeah. And I think that association is held everywhere. Like, if you have a complaint or like a bad experience talking to customer service at like Amazon, I mean, what do? You tell everybody Amazon's crap. Like, don't ever talk to their customer service. And you're like linking everybody, like generalizing everybody as being that one person you probably had an issue with. But I'm going to go back to the lady with no pants. When you're telling me this, I feel like that's just a mental health issue. Like,
Yeah, and we think it was too. Like after everything, it seems like it probably was. But
and
I wasn't there for that. I just saw the video on it. But
yeah, and like if it was or not, like I get what you're saying with like that perception, but like Tennessee started a program with their cops, their actual cops, that they have their own mental health unit that
yes,
they go in with. They're not real guns. They're like, I don't know, what do you call those? They've got like bean bags or something. They don't kill you. They're non-lethal weapons.
yeah, they start with non-lethal unless they have to
Yeah.
move further.
They assess the situation, realize, okay, this isn't right. This is abnormal behavior. They call them in. They come in and they assess the situation too, and they do it their own way. And a lot of times, it could have been a deadly situation where it wasn't because they were able to use these not deadly weapons for the right appropriate person, and it's handled. And I
Right.
know they're the start of it. I know they were doing a lot of training with other departments too, but I don't know if that would take off. I think that's a great idea because not only does it help the individual, the suspect, whoever the crazy person is, not die in these situations, but the cops too, because are ready to handle a situation that they, are, it's worst case scenario in your aspect, obviously. You think I'm going to die in this situation, and you have to go in like that. You always do, especially in like unpredictable situations like that. So I feel that every cop is trained in mental health and how to deal with people, but I think in this department, it's a lot more mental health training to really kind of evaluate a person when you're talking to them. Okay, this person's autistic, blah blah blah. Okay, this person might be delusional. They might be psychotic right now. Like they have the understanding of it to be able to assess the situation correctly, I guess.
Right.
Whereas general most cops, they have that baseline of understanding, which is great, but in that instance, it's life or death. So you're not really thinking, oh, is this person, something wrong with them? Like you're not. You don't have enough time to do that.
Right. So, we had a unit like that at the county that I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole mental health department directed just for that.
Yeah.
But I know, and I mean, half the time the problem was getting them to even come out
Yeah.
because a lot of them were like, "Oh, well, I don't need to come out for that," and
Yeah.
honestly, it was just laziness. But I'm not gonna talk bad about people, but it could have been so much better. And the way that the Tennessee unit does it, I think it's awesome because I've watched videos on them and
Mm.
I've seen some not documentary, but like a little short documentary, I guess, of them. And it was a really cool program. The only problem with that though is this is a big city that has the resources for
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
Small cities, even small counties like the county I work in with the city I work for, we don't have the resources for that. We don't have the money for that. We don't have enough people to do those things. So
Mm.
when you come to things like that, that's us. We're a jack of all trades in this part. Just your basic patrol officer. It's a jack of all trades has to know how to handle all this.
Mm.
And I mean, the state has definitely made it a little bit easier with the classes that have become mandatory to take for these things. And I think that's good because it's the I don't know. I feel like mental health has become just such a giant issue nowadays.
How do you like? You're saying, yeah. Hopefully, in the future, it'll be for every department. It'll be implemented. You have to do this. You have to have this department within your agency. But as of now, like, what do you do in those situations if someone's half naked, like trying to threaten you, and in the back of your mind, like this person is not stable. They're not here like I am. They don't see reality like I do. But also, they could take my life just as easily.
Yeah. Well, in this situation, this person didn't have a weapon or anything, so it was handled well. I know they had to try to use the taser on her, and it didn't really do much to her because
Mm-hmm.
she was in that heightened state. But I mean, you got to do your best, I guess. Right now, it's if you got to use the tools you have given to you,
Yeah.
and you got to be smart about it, and you got to know if your life is in danger or not, and you got to know when to step back, and if you have to up your use of force or if you need to down your use of force. You know, it's just there's a lot of different things there. But,
I think that's a rational, logical, and reasonable response to that. It's your job. I mean, you're trained to do that. But when you have the keyboard warriors that come out,
mm-hmm.
if an incident does like that happens, and tells you how you should be doing your job, like you're saying, how does that affect you?
it's it's annoying. It makes me mad. It makes me want to go back to my old ways, before I was a cop, where I would argue anybody on Facebook. But I don't do that anymore. So I just kind of I laugh it off now. Really, it's just like you don't know what you're talking about. Like I today I saw one of the news stations up north in Texas posted something about people arresting people for DWI and not even giving them a breathalyzer. Yeah, you don't have to. It's not a legal thing in the
How
state.
dare they?
But all these people I was reading was saying, "Oh, if someone did that, I'd sue the pants off of, and I'd do this and I'd do that." And then one guy, he's like, "Actually, every officer in the state is trained in SFSTs, which is a standard field sobriety test that lets you know if someone's intoxicated or not. And the definition of intoxicated is set legally that you can't fight it. And then we go, and that's why we get warrants for blood, or if you consent, we get blood, and we actually test the alcohol content. But my favorite one was the one who I didn't even read the whole comment because it was so stupid. He's like, "Oh yeah, of course that's what a bootlicker would say." It's like, no, that's the damn law, you idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. This is how we do that. This is why most officers, normal officers, aren't even certified in the PBT, the breath test. So there are troopers that are, the state troopers, and they'll help you out if they're around. But that's why you don't need that because we're not all certified in that. But every officer is certified in standard field sobriety tests because you get that in the academy.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
but again, that's that armchair quarterback. That's that this one guy who doesn't like cops. So anybody that agrees with cops is a bootlicker, and
I love the name calling, like
yeah.
as a last resort to his
So
arguments.
it's just so asinine.
Well, where do you see that show up in like your temperament? Like if you pulled someone over who's obviously drunk and you did all that on them, and they're like, "Well, you didn't do the breathalyzer. You're not allowed to take my blood, and I know the law, and blah blah blah." Like, does that show up within you as like a response to them?
Last night I made a DWI arrest last night, and the person was not. They weren't very compliant. They weren't rude like we talked about, but they weren't very compliant. I had to get a warrant for their blood and all that stuff. But my favorite part, and this is kind of exactly what you're talking about with this. They were being non-compliant, and the person was like, "I have two cell phones. One is in my bag in the car." And then I'm like, "Well, I grabbed the one that was sitting in your front seat. Well, I want the other one." I was like, "I don't care. I didn't grab it." And the reason I didn't, because they were non-compliant and they weren't going to help me out and make my job a little easier. So I'm like, "No, I'm not getting your phone for you. It can go in your car. It'll be locked up and it'll be towed to our lot like that. And then you can get it when you get out." But I was just kind of like, I was going to get it for them, and then they started being so non-compliant and being so. There's this thing you read called DIC 24, which is basically stating, "Hey, will you consent to a blood draw? And if not, the officer will basically get a warrant to get your blood."
Yeah.
And it was a woman. I wasn't going to say it, but she denied DIC 24. But right before she completely denied it, I read it to her. I go, "I'm asking for your blood. Do you consent?" She goes, "Will you read that to me again?" And it's this long thing. And I just looked at her. I'm like, "No." She's like, "I just want to hear you read it again." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Do you consent to blood?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay." And I slammed the door on her. And at that point, that was when she was asking for her phone. I was like, "Fuck this person. They're going to be like this to me. I'm not going to help them out anymore. They're the ones who are breaking the law, almost got in an accident because they're drunk."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of let it get to me, but I, after a few minutes, I was like, "All right, whatever. I don't care anymore." And I went on with my job and did everything I needed to. But still,
I mean, you're seeing stubbornness and shame come from her. Like, obviously, she did something bad. She knows it, so she wants to be a child about it. And
yeah,
you're
yeah.
the person she's being the child to.
And then, of
So,
course, as I'm leaving her in the jail, she's apologizing to me, and she's like,
Mhm.
"I'm so sorry, I did
There's
this."
the
I'm like,
guilt.
yeah, I was like, "You don't have to apologize to me. Like, I'm just doing my job." And,
Yeah.
like I went to shake her hand to say, "Good luck to you," and then she like grabbed my hand. She kind of like pulled me in to like almost like hug me. She's like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "Fuck
Get
off
off
me." Yeah,
me.
I wanted to, but I was like, "All right, it's fine." I like kind of pulled my arm away a little bit hard. Like, "What are you doing? Like, back off."
Oh, man. That's tough.
So, but then back to public perception though, because we kind of went off on a
Yeah.
little bit of a
That's true.
tangent. So, the media can shape the public's opinion, right?
Yeah.
Like they show one side of a story, which half the time that's what the media does, right or left. It's always one-sided. It's never fair and balanced, like some of the news stations say, right down the
No news
middle.
station is fair and
No,
balanced.
it's either one side or the other. So when they're showing the bad side, and that's what most people watch is the media that shows just the bad side,
Mm.
of course people are going to have a bad perception, and then it makes people lash out at law enforcement, and it makes the job harder for us when people want to be non-compliant and act like that, and it does. It makes the job tough.
I think going back to your point of like these, keyboard warriors talking crap and not knowing what they're talking about, like that misinformation that's just spread out because some guy just knows how to talk and has a good point and you're ignorant too. So it's like blind leading the blind, and then it just spreads and spreads, and everybody's a lawyer now and know their rights when in actuality they don't at all. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
like up in arms about it. And then I think that feeds into the cops are bad, they're taking away our rights and they will just put you in jail for anything, or they'll shoot you for any reason or any color skin you are. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all bullshit. It's a distorted, uh, the distorted mass, I guess.
yeah. It's just straight distortion. So I did see a quote the other day, and it said, "You have 140 good officers in a department and 12 bad officers, but then those 140 good officers don't do anything about the 12 bad officers. You technically have 152 bad officers."
Yeah.
I was like, geez, that was kind of, it was, I don't know, it was kind of almost like a kick in the pants a little bit. It's like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. Like, I do my job, I'll do it well. But if someone's doing something and I just kind of bat a blind eye to it, but there are laws against that too, though, that, if a cop's doing something illegal, you have the authority. It doesn't matter if it's a sergeant, lieutenant, or captain. You have the authority to stop them,
Yeah.
and technically, you have to stop them. It's part of the law, and it's part of the chapter 14 of CCP or 15, one of those. And
Would you be considered an accessory if you don't stop them?
yeah, pretty much. It's
Mm.
basically what it's saying.
Uh,
So, like, I mean, that happened with the George Floyd thing. Though one officer who was on him got arrested, well, so did the other officer who didn't stop it.
mhm.
So,
It's funny, like with police officers, like one shows up in the news as something really unethical, and all bad officers, like every one of them. Like in my my career, there's a ton of really shitty therapists and psychologists out there. Like they made a movie about one. It was Paul Rudd
yeah,
and Will Ferrell.
yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
years of just like manipulating this guy to get all of his money and just use him. And I don't like no one that I know in my area of work like thinks like that. Like, oh, there's one bad therapist. They all must be bad. Like it's just like, oh, that guy was a piece of crap. But everyone else is better. Like they're good people. But we don't use that same logic with police officers, which is
Right.
super weird.
People don't use that logic for us at all. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then when you get things like this going on and public perception, then what happens with the cops? Where that's where weird and dumb policies come from, and our tactics maybe change. And like one thing that I see all the time that happens when things like this go on, like pursuit policies. You're in a pursuit with a vehicle, and an officer gets in a wreck, and it looks bad. And then all of a sudden, the chain of command's like, you know what? I don't think we're going to pursue unless it's for something super big. Like let's not pursue at all. Like I know some cities in this area that have a no pursuit policy. Like they won't let their officers pursue because safety reasons or it looks bad to the public kind of thing. So it's just policies like that will it affects the way we do our jobs.
Do you think that's an easy fix on their part? Like instead of putting all this resource and funding into, driving courses and training, we're just gonna say no pursuit? Or do you think it's because, well, we don't want to deal with the public and
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both, probably. I
mm,
mean, it's an easy fix, and then yeah, you don't have to deal with the public scrutiny on it. And
so people just drive faster than you and get away?
pretty
Like,
much, yeah,
it's good
yeah.
to know.
Just don't. I know some of those cities that if you're you get onto that highway, you
Mm,
could be gone. You won't get caught as long as they don't get your information.
mm,
You're gone. So, and like there are certain policies. Like we don't have a policy against not chasing motorcycles, but that's not really something I do anyway, just because that is completely unsafe. Most of the time, when there's a chase with motorcycles, someone either gets really seriously injured or dies,
yeah.
and mainly it's the person driving the vehicle. So
Mm, mm,
it's just uh, but then also, you know, there's that issue where they're scrutinizing every little thing we do, especially when it comes to use of force. That if you got that in the back of your mind and then you get into a situation, are you going to handle the situation correctly?
yeah.
Or are you going to be so worried about the media scrutiny and what's going to happen that you don't handle the situation correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens then? Someone dies, you die, you know, you get killed or you get your partner killed because you were too afraid to pull your gun and shoot this person even though they were a threat
Mm.
because you didn't want the media scrutiny. You didn't want to get fired because the media, was calling for your head because you did your job right.
I see this in a lot of really good officers, and I'm going to call you a good officer because I think you are.
But oh, thanks.
Not just because I'm your wife, just because of, you did get a life-saving award recently, and that's cool.
Thank you.
But not just that, like over the years, like just the things that you've told me and just how you perform and you stick to your training and you're very logical when it comes to this stuff. And I've seen you, like, I haven't seen you, I'm not like with you behind you, like watching your every move, but hearing these stories, like you come back with a lot of um, skepticism in your own work, kind of like just second guessing things. And when it's happening, obviously your lizard brain takes control and you do the things that you were trained to do, and those are the things that, you wouldn't get you in trouble anyway, but you always go back like, oh crap, like, did I do this right? Did I do this too much? Did I not ask for this? And you go back and it's you kind of get in your head about it and you have that anxiety to it. And I think most of that has to do with people, really honing in on every little thing that you're doing because they want to pick out all the negative and blast you on social media or the media to say, well, there's another bad cop. See, we found it. He did one thing wrong in this great situation that he might have saved a life or saved other people or, you know, got the bad guy. But that one little thing, fuck him.
Right.
But I think even in good cops, like it's a big stress you guys hold on you.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I know it affects me a lot sometimes. Like there was arrest I made not too long ago, and I was like, "Oh crap, that I screwed," because it was something I've never done before, and I've never handled that situation. I didn't know if I screwed it up, and then I was the first thing I was worried about, like, oh, did I just, violate someone's rights, and am I going to get in trouble for this? When no, I did everything right, and I knew what I was doing, and I was in the right of what I did. But
Mm.
still, I mean, I was still kind of in my head about it.
It's always
So,
going to be in the back of your head. Yeah.
but then sometimes I also think that helps to an extent because it makes me want to be a better cop and it makes me want to learn more and it makes me want to make sure I'm doing things correctly.
Yeah.
So it's got its goods and bads, pros and cons to it, I guess. Because the pros are I want to learn and make sure I don't make any mistakes, but the cons are I get in my head and I stress myself out and
Yeah.
it makes me kind of miserable at home and
You carry that with you.
sometimes, yeah, not
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, just recently, it was just that one, just because I've never handled a situation like that before, and it was kind of like, I think I'm in the right. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing, and I know the law, so I know what the law was broken here. So
Yeah. Yeah. Still a little bit of um
self doubt.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's with like everybody too in any kind of job you do, but I think it's just even more so with you guys just cuz of everyone kind of watching you
yeah,
all the time.
well, yeah. I mean, everyone's got a damn camera on you now.
Yeah.
That's always my favorite when someone says though. I was like, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm filming you," and I always go, "Yeah, me too. I'm filming you because I've got a body camera on." So they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I'm like, "Yeah,
I
dumbass."
don't know, you're filming me. Stop it. Well, it's funny, like in these wellness checks too. Like I hear there's a lot of guys that came from this city in Texas out west, and they're a big department, they're a big county, and the things that they were fired for or left for or resigned for were just absolutely ridiculous. And that's their side of the story. But if these things are true, one of them was let go because he didn't have a seatbelt on because he was going in a parking lot from one spot to the other and he didn't feel the need to put a seatbelt on. He's a police officer. He was going to get out of his car again, but somebody saw him driving without a seatbelt on, and they were like, "No, that doesn't represent us." So sorry. It's like the smallest little stupidest things,
Yeah.
just to create this facade that you guys are just guys and women are just perfect beings and you're robot people, and it's just ridiculous.
Well, look at the apartment I came from,
Yeah.
and look
The
what's going
last
on in
one.
the last one. That
Yeah.
over 20 something people have either been fired or quit. Over
Some
26 people,
well, chief under investigation
and
for
the chief,
really
yeah, the
shady
chief
stuff
is
happening.
doing some extremely shady things. Some of them are known, and I don't understand how that a hole even has a job anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people get away with shit somehow.
It's just so rampant in like any type of law job, I feel like, and any type of like authority job. But yeah, whatever's going on in that department, I don't know. It's bad.
Yeah, it's not
And
good.
it's not good for like, having a job there obviously, but we live in that city. So it's like you're supposed to be protecting me, my family, and you have people patrolling our streets. So who are you hiring? Who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah,
That doesn't make me feel
I
safe.
know a few people that still work there that I trust to protect my family if something happens, but a lot of them, especially the ones that have sided with the chief and are obviously not
Corrupt.
very good of moral character.
Um,
So it's like, do I really, you know, feel safe
yeah.
that you're patrolling the streets and keeping us safe?
And that's a sad thing too. Like I feel like if you're in a lower position, maybe patrol, even like maybe corporal or sergeant, and the chief of police is asking you to do something or like trying to persuade you in some way, what can you do? If you like your job, you got good benefits, you got good pay, you've been there for a while, he could fire you for any reason.
Yeah, he does. He fires
He
people for any
does,
reason.
yes. But in the same sense, like there's a lot of people out there that just wanted to keep their job and keep, the peace of what they had, and the only way to do that is just to listen to this douchebag who's telling them what to do, and now you're some corrupt shit and
Hmm.
unethical shit. And I think a lot of innocent people get into that all the time.
Yeah,
That
very
chain of
much.
command.
Yeah, that's why it's nice that I have a really good one now.
Yeah.
So let's get off that topic because that's not really what we're talking about. I could go on, but I don't need to about this one.
Well, I'm just going to say one thing though, because there's a lot of people in the city that know what's going on that aren't police officers. That public perception of a whole department kind of resigns into that, well, all departments are shitty
True.
and they're creating shitty cops who just kill people and do whatever they want.
Yeah, yeah. And then what does that do to morale?
What does it do to morale?
Oh, it kills fucking morale.
Well, 20 people left, you said?
Hmm.
Pretty kills it.
Morale is trash there for that. But I mean more the media part of it.
Oh.
That kills morale. And then when all this stuff happened in 2020 and we were working out so much overtime because we were having to work protests and stuff, everybody's morale was trash at that point. Everybody was tired, wanted to go spend time with their family, couldn't because we were stuck doing all this extra shit. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it was miserable.
Yeah.
And the media, it's almost that you get to a point where you're doing your job and you do it well, but then you're still getting scrutinized by people who don't know anything. You just want to be like, fuck this. I don't want to do this shit anymore. You
Mm-hmm.
fucking do it. You protect the city. You protect yourself. See what happens.
Yeah.
When you call 911 and no one's there, what are you going to do? Because you've scrutinized us so much that no one wants to do this job.
Mm.
I mean, recruitment has been. I've talked to several people over the years that, like I've applied to big cities. Like I remember I applied to big city, Fort Worth, Texas, one time several years ago, and I think there was well over 5,000 people applying in that same thing. All of us taking the test. You don't get that anymore, even in the big cities. I heard something that some of these big cities are maybe getting 100, 150 applicants, and half of them aren't even worth it.
That's that's crazy. Do you think it's because of the whole "we hate cops" kind of attitude? And
Yeah, I mean, who wants to go into a job where people fucking hate you?
yeah.
I mean, if I wanted to go to a job where I was loved, though, I guess I would have been a firefighter.
Everybody loves firefighters. That is true. I think Houston was having a really big issue with this. Houston PD was, I don't know what they were doing, but they said that their applicants were just, there's nothing. Like they were
Yeah.
going out and trying to get people
Well,
to be a
same with
cop.
Dallas. Dallas the same way. I mean, they can't keep people,
Mm,
and I mean, like we talked about the other day, who wants to work in Dallas anyway? But
mm,
I mean, you're running nonstop for 12 hours, never getting a break. And
yeah.
that kills morale too. And then you do something, you get scrutinized for it, and you're like, why do I want to do this? Why
Mm,
do I want to be stressed out all day working and barely get anything for it? You know?
yeah. I mean, I feel like in your town, you're pretty much appreciated
Yes.
mostly from
Yeah.
the community, not just your um, people you work with, but the community too. But
Yeah, the small town aspect is a lot easier and on
yeah,
that. And everyone's pretty cool.
but I can't imagine these bigger cities like what they must deal with. People yelling at them, hating them.
And yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's I mean, I don't know what else to say, but it's tough.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it. So I'm gonna flip the script on
Flip, flip,
you. So public perception of police officers as a police officer feel very negative about it. People hate you. Everyone's out to just scrutinize you and take your jobs away.
Took our job.
So there's a recent study that came out and polled a lot of general people like myself about how their interactions with police officers are and how they perceive police officers after everything that's been happening lately. And the results were very positive. They found that the police officers' unique character and way that they talk to them, their communication style, their approachableness, their kindliness, what all had a factor into it. That the media and that fear of all cops are going to shoot and kill you wasn't really an issue. Even with African Americans, they pulled really positively too on that aspect. In fact, a lot of them said that they even told their family and friends about experiences they had being pulled over by a cop who was really nice and still give him a speeding ticket, but was very positive about that interaction with that cop. What do you think about that?
I mean, I believe it.
It's science, so
just kidding. Science. There's always that 10%, right? I think I've been telling you that for years, from the Marine Corps to now. There's always that 10% of a group that's just shitty. Extremists on either side. I mean, there's always that 10% of cops that do dumb, illegal shit. And same with population. Just normal people. And most interactions, if not almost all the interactions I have with people, I mean, obviously, occasionally there's some that aren't good, but pretty much every interaction I have with people is a good interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always been a firm believer of I go in with a polite attitude, even if you did something wrong, and I'll be polite the whole time. But if you start fucking with me and being an asshole, as it showed last night with the drunk person, I'm not going to be as nice.
Yeah.
But then once all that was over, and it stopped, I was back to being a normal person. Normal person, my normal person of being polite to everybody. I mean, I think I've said it on here before. I've had more people thank me for my service even after giving them a citation in a traffic stop, and thank me for, what I do even after I've given them a citation, because I go in with a good attitude. I go in positive. I go in polite, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, yeah, you're receiving a citation today because you were, going 60 miles over the speed limit, so, but, I don't know. It's just, I believe most people have a good attitude still towards law enforcement, but there's always just that group, and they always seem to be the loudest.
Yeah.
Because the people who, even the ones that say they have good experiences, they don't speak up as much. You talked to my chief the other day, last time when you saw him, and what did he say? He's like, yeah, so many people will be on Johnny on the spot to complain about a police officer if they do something wrong. But if they do something really good, no one will ever call and be like, hey, he did such a good job. So I think that's kind of where some of that comes from too, is people are afraid to call and say something good about them. It's like, if you met a cop and they did something really good for you, yeah, of course, give them good accolades. Call their department and say, hey, he was really good. That is very refreshing for most officers, I think, when you get a call of, hey, they're just calling to say how good you did and they want to thank you for it, compared to, they're complaining that you were a dick or you were speeding, or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So
I don't think a lot of people, I don't know, I don't know anyone's frame of thought here, but this is my theory on it, is, you call to tell somebody, like, this officer was great, I had a great experience, he's such a nice person. In your mind, you're like, if I call, it's going to give him, some gratitude and some appreciation, and that's great. But his future behavior after this is probably going to be the same, and that, I feel even great thinking of that. Like, the next person he comes into interaction with is going to experience what I experienced, and it was positive. Someone who's calling to complain about someone is trying to stop that behavior.
True.
Hey, I'm throwing a red flag here because this person is a dick, or he did something wrong or unethical, and I don't want it to continue. I think it's like maybe like the end goal there was like the appreciation thing is maybe not part of their mind frame. And some people do go out of their way to do that, which is really nice. But I think most people don't, just because the negative is something they want to stop.
True. But
sucks.
I think sometimes people complain on cops just because they want to.
And then, yeah, of course.
I got a complaint because I was speeding one time.
Yeah.
But the guy didn't. say that he was driving 10 miles under the speed limit in the no passing lane, or in the passing lane, not moving. And then when I went past him, oh, he went past me at like 100. I'm like, no, I went past you at the speed limit because you were going 10 under the speed limit. So it's
his perception was way off.
Yeah, it's just shit like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, or just get out of the way when you see a cop coming, because what if they're going somewhere? Yeah, maybe they don't have their lights on, but they still need to get to a call semi-fast, so they're going a little faster than they need to be.
Yeah.
Because if it was you and you were calling and you needed us there, wouldn't you want us to get there as soon as possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think society as a whole is pretty negative. We're always like, I mean, it's part of us, like that confirmation bias. We're always, fearing what could kill us or what's wrong and how can we correct it and make it better. And a lot of that is negative, especially towards you guys. Sucks. But even you, like you said, like you come into all these good interactions with people and that's probably 99% of your job, but that 1% still stresses you out because you get people like that call on you and for doing nothing wrong.
Right.
But it's hard.
Well, and I mean, I consider myself, like you said, a good cop, and I want to be a good cop, and I don't want people to complain on me because I don't want to do things that make people think I'm not a good cop.
Do you think there's ever a time in your career where that will never be an issue for you, or a fear or a concern?
Yeah, when I retire.
Really?
When I no longer have to worry about what people care and say about me.
Yeah. There's a really big thing in my world, all through school and even all ethics in my area is like, first rule of psychologists is don't sleep with your patients, and second rule of psychologists is don't sleep with your patients because there's so much of it going on.
Yeah.
It's really dumb. And I remember like the first couple of months of being face to face with patients and talking with them, like if I had like a male in the room or something that was my client, and that would be like in my head, like, okay, I'm not attracted to this person, I don't have any feelings, this is a new person, but don't sleep with this person. Like it was like always there, and then it went away after a while.
Really?
Because I knew like that's not who I am. It's just been drilled in my head so much that I was always like a concern that I didn't know I had a concern for it until I was told that a million times. But then after a while, I was like, well, that's just not who I am, and that's not what I do.
Yeah.
Not a concern anymore.
I was like when I worked in the jail. I mean, they had signs all over the place: "Don't sleep with inmates." And you know what? It still happened. People still did it. And people still got fired. And...
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. There was a psychologist recently that got in trouble. I don't know how many clients. I think it was like half of his clients he was sleeping with, and he was married, had kids, and everything. Like it was crazy. And some of them it was non-consensual. Like it was bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, I don't know.
But like you as a police officer, like you know what you're doing. You're, like I said, very logical about your training, and even your lizard brain is just there. Where even when you feel like you don't have control of it, it knows what to do because you've been trained so well in it. Do you think that, in the after effect of that you wouldn't be second guessing yourself, or do you think that would ever go away?
I don't know. I'd like it to go away. I'd like to not have to do that. Just to know I did my job correctly, but. Also, I feel with the way law enforcement is constantly changing and things are constantly different. I mean, law enforcement isn't the same as it was 10 years ago when I started or 11 years ago when I started. It's a completely different ball field now. Mm-hmm. So things we would have done, but like just even working in the jail, let's say, I started in the jail. I worked there for 5 years. The way we handled things in the jail when I first started in 2013 compared to when I left, I'll be honest, we were a lot rougher with inmates that deserved it, that wanted to fight and stuff. And as I was leaving and transitioning into patrol, that kind of went away. Like they weren't allowed to do certain things. They could barely go in on inmates, even if they're acting crazy. Like an inmate was banging on the door and being crazy in their cell, we'd go in and we'd deal with it. As I was leaving, they were basically telling you, don't worry about it. He's just banging on a cell. It's not a big deal. Like, so yeah, it's just, and that was in a 5-year period of just the change. So, like I said, law enforcement is always changing, and policies are always changing, and the way you do the job is always changing. So I think that's part of the issue on why I'm always going to have that second guess on myself. It's like, well, okay, I would have handled it this way. Did I handle it correctly now
Mm.
with the climate, with the political climate, with the national climate, all that? It's like, am I handling this the right way now compared to what I would have done back then?
Do you have a fear that maybe you're not up to date with the change because it does change so frequently, and you've been trained in,
Well, yeah.
since.
So every 2 years we do a legal update.
Mm,
So laws change.
mm,
So we got to learn those. So every 2 years you got to learn new laws and things that have changed to existing laws and all that kind of thing. So yeah, there are things that like, oh, did I miss that? Am I missing something here? Did I do
mm,
something wrong? So I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever go away,
mm,
just because I don't want to screw up and do something real bad and then lose my career.
mm.
You know, so
Is there anything that you do that you're just so confident in that you don't second guess it? Because maybe it's something that doesn't change a lot or hasn't at all.
I mean, I guess just doing traffic stops.
Yeah.
That's always been the same. I mean, it's the same
Right.
7-step violator. You do what you got to do, and
Yeah.
you keep yourself on a swivel. Make sure you're paying attention to it and stuff. So,
That's good.
but even then, you can still have those moments of doubt, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I'm curious now, like that change in the jail, like if they were banging on the wall or whatever, you would go in there and rough them up because they were being loud.
we go in and handle them, and
Why?
maybe put them in a because they're not supposed to be doing
Because
that
they're
at the
annoying.
time. They weren't. Well, so remember we talked about this about the lying to an inmate.
Yeah.
That if this one's banging on his cell, it starts pissing other inmates off. Well, then they start banging on their cells, and then it becomes a huge issue. And we have it. Listen, they're in jail and they got to do what they're told, right? And that's one of the rules. You're not supposed to bang on your cell and do all that stuff.
Mm.
That's all it was. But you got one, and then other ones are trying to sleep or getting pissed off, and they start doing things, and they start ramping people up, and then that's just to me, it's how things get worse, and more issues arise.
Makes sense.
So you go in and you handle the one issue, and then it's over, and then you don't have any more issues. But
Mm.
now it's like, oh well, let's just let them do what they want. They get to do whatever they want.
Were you still there when they were implemented that new policy?
It was. I guess I was at the very beginning of all the new stuff. Like I mean, like I said, as different people got promoted, things started changing and
Mm.
stuff, and so I watched it change. But
Mm.
I haven't talked to anybody in the jail in a while. But last time I did, I mean, they not only were they super short, but they couldn't do anything. They weren't allowed to do anything
Yeah.
because then a lot of that was because they didn't have enough people. But you know, still,
Makes sense. I'm curious about that outcome of if that's working for them or not.
I wouldn't even know anymore.
Yeah.
It's that's the same thing though. It just goes back to that political climate thing of
Mm.
things are changing, so policies change.
I mean, change isn't bad.
It's not always bad. No, sometimes it can be, but not always.
Do you think there's any policies right now you think are bad policies that have changed? Or not bad policies that have changed, but policies that have changed for the bad.
For the bad,
Yeah, like maybe it shouldn't have changed or didn't need to be changed.
I don't know if it's policy per se, but I think it's just back to the whole worrying you're going to be filmed or scrutinized or lose your job. And I mean, that big worry right there, I think it affects a lot of guys, and maybe, like I said, makes them not act the way they should. Not like oh, I'm acting this way. I mean, like react to something the right way.
Yeah.
There's a old video, and I know every cop has seen it. We all probably saw it in the academy, and I can't remember the officer's name, but he got in trouble. If I remember the story correctly, he got in trouble for like a use of force like a week or two before. Um, and he makes a traffic stop on an old guy, and this old guy gets out of his car and starts shooting at him with a rifle and kills him.
Hmm.
And you hear him in the video like, "Oh, I'm in fear of my life. I'm in fear of my life," and he didn't act. What they said was he didn't act fast enough in the way he should have acted because he was scared he was going to lose his job, but instead
Jeez.
he lost his life because he didn't do it because of
Wow.
something that happened.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's awful.
Yeah, it's a shitty video, and we've all heard it. And just the audio of it just makes you cringe and just makes you sick to your stomach.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, can't imagine being in that situation like that. Having that history too of use of force issues.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I mean, what's that old saying? It's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6, but
Oh, because they're holding the
the
casket.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm pregnant. I'm dumber than I've
Yeah,
ever
okay.
been. I was like, I told my supervisor, I was like, I have two brains in my body. I've never felt stupider. I really haven't. Like, all my brain cells are going to creating the baby.
Well, we're almost there.
Yeah,
Almost there.
almost there.
2 more months. And then our 4th one.
Mm. Yay!
All right, everybody. Yeah, like we said earlier in the beginning, we haven't really been able to get a lot of episodes out just because of life and work
I'm stupid.
and pregnancy, and we're gonna try to stay a little bit more up to date on it. I'm thinking next episode with Halloween coming up, we might do
Ooh.
our spooky episode.
I like it.
Have a fun episode and
Yeah.
talk about ghosts and goblins
Ghouls and goblins.
cryptids, and spooky stuff.
Lizard people.
Yes, the lizard people.
Yeah.
But, all right, guys. Again, we thank you all for listening. If you want to contact us, you can contact us at thepolicecondition@gmail.com. If you have any ideas for a story or an issue you'd like to hear us talk about, we would gladly do some research on it and talk about it.
Or if you have any stories too.
Or
bring
stories,
those
yeah.
too.
We'll gladly tell some stories. That'd be awesome too. If you got any spooky stories coming up and you want us to talk about some spooky stuff, maybe you had some weird stuff happen to you on night shift.
Yeah.
Give us an email or reach out on our Facebook at the Police Condition. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Apple and Spotify.
Just don't follow us in real life.
Yeah, just not in real life because that might not be good. But yeah, so you've been listening to The Police Condition. My name's Ryan.
I'm Laura.
And we're 1042.